We have never been more connected, yet so many people feel unseen, unheard, and unknown. We scroll, we message, we react, but something deeper is missing. Tonight, we are talking about why loneliness is rising, how disconnected fuels depression, and what it actually takes to build relationships that are life giving and lasting. With that, I welcome to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, and I'm your host, Yusuf. It is the show where we focus on practical, everyday conversations that support real mental well being. My guest today is Keith Spurgeon, a relationship coach, leader of leaders, author, and avid cyclist. Keith is known for his grounded, practical guidance on building healthy relationships that strengthen both individuals and organizations. Our conversation centers on his new book, Unknown: Finding Connection in a Disconnected World, and the powerful link between relational isolation and depression. So, if you have ever felt lonely, even while surrounded by so many people or constantly online, this episode is for you. And without any further delay, I welcome my guest, Keith, to the show.
Hello, Yusuf. It's so good to be here with you and with all your listeners. It's an honor to be connected with you. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. And I am really excited to get this conversation started. So, let's dive in.
All right.
A lot of people assume that being busy, productive, and socially active online means they are fine. What's the biggest misconception people have about connection when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's connection and there's connection, if you know what I mean. Is like we have all these followers, we have people on social media. We may even have friends or family that we talk to, but we can still feel isolated. We can still feel like, "Man, does anybody really know me? Does anybody really know who I am? Or does anybody care?" That's the bigger question. And so, there's a big difference between having followers, having acquaintances, and having some friends, coworkers, and then feeling connection where you're truly known, seen, and heard. So that's kind of the misconception. I can have a lot of people around me and think, "Oh, I'm doing great." Are you really? You know, how are you how are you when you go to sleep at night? Do you feel connected or do you feel alone? When you're by yourself, do you feel seen and heard? And it's a big difference.
Yeah. And why do you think loneliness is still so hard for people to admit even today?
Well, in my culture anyway, nobody wants to be that person. Nobody wants to be the person that feels alone because that means what? Do you not have friends? Did nobody like you? You're not popular? You don't have followers? You don't have all these things? So it's hard. It's very humbling to say, "Yeah, I kinda feel alone. I feel by myself." I think that's really it's shame more than anything.
Yeah, that is true. And because of that shame, there are lot many times that people want to stay with those people that in turn make them feel alone. So they are stuck in this kind of spiral.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange thing. We sometimes are attracted to the very people who hurt us the most.
Yeah.
It's like people who are abused, they end up they're abused in their childhood, they end up marrying an abuser. And it's what you're used to, until you break the cycle, you're just gonna keep perpetuating the same thing over and over and over again. So, yeah.
What patterns or habits have you seen that slowly pull people away from meaningful relationships without them realizing it?
that pull people away from meaningful relationships?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a great question because that's such a big thing. You know, a lot of people, um, they self-sabotage. Does that make sense? Does that you
Yeah.
know what I mean by that? They self-sabotage relationships. It's like, "Okay, I've got this new friend, and it's great, and it's wonderful, but they're probably going to reject me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and sabotage the relationship. I'm gonna just disappear. I'm gonna ghost them. I I'm gonna say something that I know they're gonna be that's gonna really bother them and offend them, and that will end the relationship." And so we perpetuate these same patterns that we learned early, usually in our families, you know? And a lot of times, the other reason I see that people, lose healthy relationships is because they don't know how to deal with conflict.
Yeah.
So every relationship that you ever have in your life will have conflict, every single one of them. And people don't think like that. People think, "Oh, if I find the right relationship, we won't have any conflict." That's just not true because we're all imperfect people living in an imperfect world. So you're going to have conflict in relationships. I don't care how great that person is, how wonderful they are. If you're both fully present, you're going to disagree at times. And conflict doesn't mean you're screaming at each other. It just means I think this way and you think that way. We think differently about something. That's a conflict. Well, a lot of people grow up in homes, in families where conflict is the worst thing ever. Like, if you ever have a con is there's lots of families where if you ever have a conflict, people yell, they shout, they scream, they call names, they slam doors, sometimes there's violence. So, what happens is that what gets ingrained in our minds, and this is there's neuroscience behind this, but what gets ingrained in our minds is conflict is bad and it needs to be avoided at all cost. And so you start building a relationship, you start really getting to know each other, all of a sudden there's a conflict, I'm out, I'm gone. And so many people live that way and they just live in this cycle of going through one relationship after another. In my book, I call it the relational pain cycle. And it's just, we just do it over and over and over again because we don't know how to deal with conflict. So, yeah, it's a big deal.
And from your work, how does relational disconnection usually show up in everyday life before it turns into depression, burnout, etc.?
Honestly, Yusuf, it's exactly what I was just talking about. Most commonly, there's a conflict and a person just disconnects. They just back away. You know, they disappear. And of course, they're going to be lonely. They're going to feel isolated because they've isolated themselves. And that's the most common way that it happens is just an inability or an unwillingness to lean into conflict so that we can get through it and then have a better relationship on the other side of it.
Yeah.
You know, we've all experienced or seen like a maybe this is an American thing, but we have couples, that they'll say, "Oh, we had a terrible fight, but making up was great." And what are they saying? They're saying, "We worked through the conflict, we got to the other side of it, and now we're closer than we were before."
Yeah.
That is the pattern that we all need to engage to have long-term healthy relationships.
In Muay Thai martial artist fighting style, they first break your shin bones. And when those bones are intact again, when they grow again, they are stronger than even steeds. So that's
Yes.
how we do it in relationship as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how relationships mature.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are immature because they haven't leaned into the hard conversations, the conflict that was painful and difficult. They haven't leaned into it and tried and really worked through it to the place of reconciliation. So as a result, they're really immature. There's a great illustration I shared in my book about if you if you plant a tree
Mm.
and you let that tree grow for a while, and then you dig it up and you replant it, that it'll be difficult for the tree, but you do that one time, the tree will be fine. If you keep digging that tree up and replanting it and keep digging up, it will never mature. It's never going to become the full grown tree that it had the potential to become. That same thing is true for us as humans. If we keep moving from one relationship to another, from one job to another, from this to that to do that, we never mature because we never have the ability to dig roots down deep and develop those relationships that grow us up. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what are the early warning signs that people should pay attention to in themselves?
Mhm. So, in I don't know if you guys call it this where you live, but in the States, we call it, canceling people,
Can you
and it's
like this? Me?
you have a like, if you have a disagreement with somebody, you just cancel them. In other words, y I'm not talking to you anymore because we disagree. Or you disagree with somebody on social media, and it's like you block them.
Block.
And one of the early warning signs that you're gonna be isolated at the end of your life is you're starting to cancel people. You're starting to push people out of your life. Um, we need to learn how to be open people where we can have disagreements with people and still love those people. Where we can, have genuine conversations where you see it this way, I see it that way, but we can keep loving each other and connecting with each other even though we don't agree about some things. That so if you're canceling people or if you're distancing people or if you're saying, "Well, I'm never talking to them again," man, that's a warning sign to you that you're moving toward isolation, and the problem with that is eventually, it's just gonna be you,
Yes.
and there's a lot of people that I've met in their later years of life who are alone. They don't wanna be alone, but they've done it to themselves.
My next question to you would be that building connection can feel risky, especially if someone has been hurt before. How do you how do people stay open without burning out or shutting down again?
Oh, this is a tough one. And
Yes.
it's a big deal for all of us because we all get hurt in relationships. Because again, we're all imperfect people, right? So we've all been hurt. And I think recognizing that is part of it, is realizing, hey, I'm not the only one that's gotten hurt. I'll, everybody gets hurt in relationships. And then we have to choose, are our relationships worth pressing through the pain?
Mm.
Or am I just going to say, you know what? I'm not even going to try. I'm just out. The problem is when we do that, we end up very isolated and more pain because of the isolation. So, the idea that, "Okay, I'm just gonna not be close to people, that way I won't get hurt," it doesn't work because we are hardwired for connection. As human beings, we're designed for connection with other human beings. So, when you isolate yourself, you're only gonna create more pain for you there.
Yeah. And n- what helps people keep moving forward when vulnerability feels uncomfortable?
Well, the most simple answer for that is forgiveness, and that's not easy. Forgiveness means you don't owe me anything. That's really what it means. You don't owe me an apology, you don't owe me to change your life, you don't owe me to fix anything. Really, forgiveness means I'm letting go, and, letting go is hard when we've been hurt. So I like to think of it in terms of layers, like, you know how an onion gets dry on the outside and you peel off the dry part, and then you let it sit a little while, and then it gets dry again, and you peel off the dry part, and there's, like, layers to the onion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's same thing is true with forgiveness. When someone hurts us, we forgive, we to whatever level we can at that moment. It may not be complete forgiveness because there's layers, right? You can only get so far. So you forgive whatever layer you can, but don't stop there, you know? It's like the next time you see that person and all those old feelings come back up, that doesn't mean you didn't forgive, it just meant you forgave as far as you could. So now,
Yeah.
the next layer, forgive that layer and let it go. And forgiveness does not mean that what they did is okay. When a lot of people say, "I'm not forgiving because what they did was not okay." I'm like, "Well, if it was okay, you wouldn't need to forgive." Right?
Yeah.
Right. That's the whole idea behind forgiveness. So yeah, what they did was really bad, and we need to lean into that pain and look at it honestly and say, "Okay, this is what really hurt me," so that we can truly forgive. Because if you don't ever look at it honestly,
Yeah.
you're not you what are you forgiving? You gotta be honest with yourself. This is what hurt, and this is what I need to let go of. This is what I wanna move on from. And so, forgiveness
I,
is at the heart of reconnection. You're never gonna be able to reconnect with somebody who's hurt you truly until you forgive.
yeah. And there's also a very fine balance of courage and patience with forgiveness,
Mhm.
which you just showed. And I really like that distinction and the balance.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah,
If you don't forgive, you're really only hurting yourself.
yeah, true. Keith, are there any ways that our listeners can connect with you?
Absolutely. I have a website, keithspurgeon.net. So KEITHSPURGIN .net, N-E-T. Um, there's information about me, there's ways to connect with me there, and there's also information about my new book, Unknown: Finding Connection in a Disconnected World. I'd love for any of your listeners to check that out, and, I'd love to for them to contact me. I'd love to be connected with them.
Perfect. And listeners, all these links are available in the show's notes. So just go and check those out. Keith, is there any last message that you want to leave us with?
Yes. You know, there's an author and speaker and researcher here in the States, called Brené Brown, and she says, "We are hardwired for connection, and without it, there is suffering." And I just think that's so powerful, and I hope your listeners can remember that even when connection is painful, it's still worth it to be connected because that's how we're designed. That's who we are as humans. So, stay connected, people. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you for tuning into Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. This was your Yusuf. And if today's conversation resonated, take one step toward real connection. Reach out, listen deeply, or let yourself be known a little more than yesterday. I thank Keith Spurgeon, my guest, for his valuable insights, knowledge, and I urge each of my listeners to go and check his book and his website. Until next time, I'll see you in the next episode.